Hey guys, I'm Hannah Cox with BASEDPolitics, and you're watching my show, Histrionics, where every week I talk about women's issues from a centrist point of view. If you like this video, don't forget to watch others in the series, like, and subscribe to the channel. For those of you who have been watching this series all along, you're going to be very excited about today's episode because it's one I've been promising you for weeks, and it's finally here. We are going to be talking about dating horror stories from women. But before I get into the meat of today's episode, I have to address some comments I've been seeing that are very irritating to me. It has always grinded my gears as a political and social commentator when I talk about an issue that's happening in the political spectrum and society. There is inevitably at least one man or two, and trust me, it is usually a man, that gets into the comment sections and wants to know, what about this whole other problem over here? I call this whataboutism, and I think that this kind of participation in debate and political discussions is the absolute bottom of the intellectual barrel. First and foremost, as a political commentator, I am putting a lot of work and effort into the subject matters that I am bringing to you week in, week out. It takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of scouring the internet for backup, for materials to bring the conversation into one cohesive format. It takes a lot of time to film and then to edit and then to produce and then to promote each piece of content. And so it is absolutely ridiculous when a commentator puts that amount of work into subject matter and brings it to people to discuss a certain issue at hand, to have somebody then say, why don't you talk about this whole other completely unrelated issue over here? It's basically just a way for these people to escape having to actually confront the issues they're being presented with. And it's also just absolutely ridiculous. There is no way that any commentator can talk about every issue under the sun in a single piece of content, particularly in shorter form content on places like TikTok or Instagram. Secondarily, if you want to talk about this other issue way over here, go talk about it. You're not producing content. You're not on my channel. I'm the woman in the arena. We're going to talk about what I want to talk about. So per usual, I want to highlight some of these kinds of comments I've seen on the videos of Histrionics. Here's one from Barry McConnor. Anyways, he says, no criticism for women. How centrist of you. I don't have to criticize women to have a centrist point of view on women's issues. Here's another from Instagram where the guy said, now talk to the other side and show why men have given up. And as I pointed out, statistically, men haven't given up. They're actually just not even trying. The vast majority of them are not even approaching women. And I want to say something like well over 50% of them who are under age 25 have had zero relationships with women in the past year. I started Histrionics because I wanted to talk about women's issues from a woman's perspective. I am very committed to nuance in this discussion, and I'm actually very genuine in my desire to hopefully move the gender wars in a direction of actually finding a better playing field for men and women, finding better ways that we can achieve complementarianism. I'm here to talk about women's experiences and our problems and our perspectives from that lens, from that perspective. But what I'm not here to do is beat up on women, because there is plenty of that already happening in conservative right-wing spaces. I'm actually here to push back on that and all of the crud I see coming from the red pill movement, and to give women a voice in these discussions from a more right-wing nuanced perspective. Because the vast majority of time, when you do see people condemning what's happening in the red pill communities, condemning this kind of rhetoric, it's coming from far left feminists who I don't think have anything better to offer. As I said in my episode last week, I actually think that far left, fourth wave feminists are pretty much the same as red pill men. I'm also here to talk about women's issues in the hopes that it can help well-intentioned men, of which I believe there are still many, foster better relationships with women, have a better understanding of the problems that we're facing, and work with other well-intentioned women to hopefully achieve this better field, this better relationship in the end. So I want to be sure there is no mistake for people watching my videos that this channel, this platform, this series is unapologetically pro-woman. Let's go! It's also pro-man. What it's anti is crappy people in general. And if your first reaction to hearing me discuss the bad behavior of men towards women is to pitch a hissy fit in my comments and be like, what about women? Pile on women. You are telling on yourself. That is the conduct and behavior and mentality of a toddler. You need to really go examine where that's coming from, because you're triggered. Well-intentioned men, men who actually like women, men who are wanting to foster better working relationships with the opposite gender, they are very open to hearing about the negative experiences of women as it pertains to men, just as I am also open to hearing from men about their negative experiences with women. I am well aware that there are some valid criticisms to be had. Trust me. I have a husband who has an ex-wife. I have seen what some of these men deal with. I have brothers who have dealt with some absolute harlots. I have best male friends who I have seen go through some real ringers with women they've dated. I've made videos about the family court system and things that need to change within it. I have, to the best of my abilities, tried to speak to some of the issues I have observed when it comes to women. And I do think on an individual level, there are some men dealing with some truly unhinged women who can be abusive, who are opportunistic, and who are ultimately of low value. As I've also mentioned on that show, though, in my experience, those men are often ending up in those situations because they have bad values. They are making their choices on partners based on bad values, and interestingly, those bad values are the same ones the red pill community is telling them to elevate and prioritize. They value things like a woman's appearance, how old she is, how fertile she is.
As if!
They value women who they perceive as being less educated, less ambitious, more submissive. And they actually put down women who are hardworking, who are ambitious, who are strong-minded.
You really gotta take this down.
Why?
No, I mean, you're like a serial killer.
Hey, don't cap on my supermodels, Johnny. Don't go there. Leave it alone.
I'm just saying it's creepy.
They don't value actual virtues, and so they ending up with women who also do not have virtues and who are of low character. And men need to be very careful about this. I have said this loud and clear. Men need to be a lot more careful about the kinds of women that they pursue. They need to have better values themselves. They especially need to be more careful about who they reproduce with, because boy, are you stuck after that point. So I've talked about this. When you say, what about women? I have talked about these things. You're actually not going and listening. What you're doing is getting triggered the minute I talk about men and their negative behaviors, because you don't want to confront that within yourself or within the other men that you know. But as a whole, the experiences men are having with women are not really mine to speak to. I can touch on them, but really ultimately from a surface level. Secondarily, there is a plethora of people in right-wing spaces piling on women as we speak. While some of the criticisms towards women may be warranted, that's really not the vast majority of what I'm hearing from these camps or from men online in general. Instead, they're criticizing the attributes they should be praising, and they are encouraging the mentalities and bad values that get men in these problematic relationships to begin with. Most of what I see from men online criticizing women over is not actually valid. As discussed on this show ad nauseum, and I will continue to point it out, instead, it's tearing down women for being hard workers. It's tearing down women for being more successful than men. It's telling women they're only good when they're young and fertile. It's pushing for women to be subservient to men. It's deriding women when they refuse to do that and actually prioritize their own happiness. And it's threatening women with public policy goals that would strip them of their individual rights. Things like saying we should repeal the 19th Amendment or we should end no-fault divorce. That is the content I am mostly seeing from men when it comes to talking about the issues with women. It's illiberal, it's anti-human, and it's frankly creepy. If I'm being honest, I see very little valid criticisms of women online from men in these discussions, and I'm open to hearing them. I spend a lot of time online scouring the internet looking for such cases. But the equivalent of the content that I'm about to bring you here today simply cannot be found from men. So for those of you in my audience who are actually interested in the full landscape, who truly want to have a better idea of what women are up against right now out in society, we are going to talk about the absolute horror stories from women who are out trying to date and simply find a partner right now. Contrary to the red pill's 666 theory, or their 80-20 myth, which I debunked a few weeks ago, women's standards are not too high. Far from it. In fact, the opposite is true. I think it is absolutely crazy to hear what so many women are dealing with in their relationships with men right now. In fact, it's so crazy, it's so scary that it is ultimately actually turning a lot of women off from marriage and even committed relationships in general.
I am so through with men. One more guy walks out on me, I don't even know what, I swear.
In fact, when you start digging into the conversation, what you'll find is that most women believe, and studies back up the fact, that men benefit more from marriage than they do. This is data from the American Survey Center, and they go on to write that even if marriage benefits both men and women, there is more of an upside for men. Men derive greater health benefits from marriage than women. Married fathers receive an earnings boost while mothers receive a penalty. And this could be why more women are likely to file divorce. And I want to say, as I have before, but I think it's important to continue to reiterate it, that yes, while women are more likely to file for divorce than men, that doesn't mean they are causing the divorce. That just means they're filing the paperwork. The same survey goes on to note women are disproportionately likely to end marriages. A 2015 study found that 69% of divorces were initiated by women. A more recent survey that asked divorced men and women who initiated the divorce found an astonishing gender gap. Among straight women, 66% said they made the decision to end their marriages, while only 39% of divorced men said the same. A Pew study finds that men are also more likely than women to remarry after marriage ends. They go on to say these findings do not conclusively answer the question of who benefits more from marriage, but they are highly suggestive of how men and women perceive the costs and benefits of marriage. People who choose to divorce and avoid remarrying probably see less value in the institution. This is no judgment on the deeply personal decisions involved in ending a marriage. For the most part, these decisions are not made lightly or capriciously and frequently involve serious issues such as physical and emotional abuse, which women suffer at far higher rates than men. Although marital infidelity is difficult to measure, married women report partner infidelity more often than men do. So, while men in the red pill community or the manosphere like to threaten women about being alone, ending up with cats, never getting married, or having kids, they're really just projecting. It's them that is afraid of these outcomes, not women. What women are afraid of is ending up in a bad relationship, a bad marriage, stuck, financially dependent, and especially with kids. And that's why there is a growing number of women who are actually actively choosing to be single and sit this out. I
Doesn't guarantee a happy ending, just an ending.
firmly do not believe that the vast majority of men who are incels or who are single are choosing that. That is something that they have been forced to reckon with. Most of them still very badly want to obtain women, hence the absolute obsession in these communities. Whereas, as I've spoken about before, the women that are walking away, they seem to just be kind of forgetting about men altogether. And there is a plethora of these stories of women online. I think it's a really interesting time. This is not something that I had access to when I was younger and dating. I am very curious about how it would have impacted my mentality at that time had I been watching some of this content. But on platforms like TikTok, we see a lot of older women coming on and simply sharing their experiences, talking about their divorces, talking about why they got divorced, talking about how they feel after their divorce. Many of them are saying they never want to be married again. And I think you have a lot of younger women who are observing those women, who are listening to their stories and thinking, you will never let that happen to me. Absolutely not. And they're totally checking out.
We have a huge problem in this country of 32-year-old college-educated young women with cats.
Oh my. You type of podcast bros just keep exposing yourself. You must live a very blissful life if you think the worst thing that's going on is the fact that women are choosing cats instead of your dusty, crusty ass. Since we're on the topic, maybe reflect as to why there's an influx of women who would rather spend their time with cats and why they aren't choosing you or your fan base. If multiple women are choosing our feline counterpart and sprinting away from you, the call is coming from in the house. Fix yourself or cat it up and get over it.
The same way that you would find comfort from a 200-pound weight being unshackled from your foot. That's how. The societal expectation for men in relationships is that they get to take. That's why men find comfort in relationships and not a single wife. The societal expectation for women in relationships is that they are going to give, oftentimes receiving nothing in return. So you tell me, how do women find comfort in that? Very easily, because they're not being drained by men, because women have realized that relationships with men happen at their expense. That's why it is better for women to be single than to be with a man, just to be with a man, okay? And for men, it is the opposite. It is harder for them to be single, and it is literally easier and still more beneficial for them to get into a relationship, even with a woman that they don't like. That's why a lot of women will spend 5 to 7 to 8 years without a ring because some loser man is telling them that, oh, I just don't believe in marriage and all of that, da-da-da-da-da. And then that same man will break up with his girlfriend of 8 years and be engaged in 3 to 6 months because a relationship for a man is just a calculation. It's an expense calculation. It's a money in, money out calculation that benefits them. And now that women have started doing the calculation and saying, oh, you know what? This is actually not worth it for me. It's worth it for you. I can see that, but it's actually not worth it for me. Now men are over here wondering, well, how will women ever find comfort in a single life where they're not being taken advantage of and exploited and used for their labor and used for the intimate pleasures of a man who gives them nothing in return, who gives them no intimate pleasures in return, that they have to get on birth control so that he can enjoy those intimate pleasures, that they have to feed, that they have to clean up after, that they have to think for, literally think for. Oh, well, why didn't you remind me? Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know that was important to you. Look around and think. Why do women have to think for you? Oh, what will women do without men? What will women do when they're not in a relationship? They're gonna be fucking. That's what they're gonna do. That's how they're going to find comfort. Women have friends. Women are not ashamed to make a deep emotional connection with another woman, the way that men are to do with another man. Women will go out and find community because women haven't stigmatized helping other people. Men have. Women are going to pick up a hobby that's infinitely more rewarding, less stressful, and you actually get to take credit for your own hobby. Most women never even get to take credit for how they've built a man up, for how they taught him everything he knows before he takes all of that, then feels like he's leveled up and then leaves them for the next one, leaves them for a woman that he couldn't get before. Relationships are a net loss for women. So how do you find comfort in being single? You might be single as a woman, but at least you are not an unpaid housekeeper, chef, personal planner, escort, all that and more to some loser man for free. That's the comfort. That's the comfort in that. Is you're thinking, I might be alone, but at least I'm not cooking somebody's every meal, cleaning up after them, replacing and fixing things that they've destroyed because of their thoughtlessness, feeling like all the time, high cortisol levels, risk of pregnancy, risk of being cheated on, risk of being embarrassed, losing your close friendships, your close family relationships, losing your career, having kids for a man, risk of giving up your education for a man because a man's career is more important. And because, you know, he's going to be the breadwinner someday to another woman that didn't help build him. He's going to take the value that you provided into his life, use it to build himself up and leave you without your education, without your career, without all the things that you gave up for him. And you know what he's going to say at the end? He's going to say, you didn't have to do any of that. So where do you find comfort? I don't know, ladies, you tell him in the comments. Where do you find comfort?
Now, I want to take a second and distance myself here. I want to point out that just because I show you some of this content backing up the conversations I'm hearing online, it doesn't mean I always wholeheartedly agree with it. I personally think marriage is wonderful. I think it is one of the best things you can do. I think it benefits both men and women as long as you pick the right partner. And that is such a gigantic asterisk because while I believe that firmly with my left hand, on the right hand, I also believe that if you pick the wrong partner, if you pick somebody with bad values, it can be one of the most destructive choices you make in your lifetime. You need to be excessively careful. That's true for both genders, but it is truer for women because they simply have more at stake.
As far as I'm concerned, the test of a good relationship is, are you like this or like this?
They are more likely to be abused. They are more likely to be cheated on. They are more likely to get left with the kids if a divorce does occur. They are more likely to experience financial ruin in the outcome of divorce. And I think there's often a perception when we talk about how badly this can go for women, that these women are just stupid. They're just making bad choices, that they just have bad taste in men. You'll often hear people in the red pill say, well, you should have picked better. And I personally find that rhetoric infuriating. Now, I come from a long line of successful marriages. My parents have been married for over 40 years, and actually, there is not a single divorce in my family. You have to go out to like second, third cousins and great aunts and uncles that I've maybe met once as a baby somewhere in the Midwest in order to find any divorce in my family. It simply doesn't happen. And so I grew up with a very healthy view on marriage. I grew up with a really good model of what to look for in a relationship. I grew up with a really amazing father who gave me a good example of what I should look for in a man. So I was entering the dating pool with a lot more going for me than the vast majority of people, right? Most people these days are coming from divorce. Many people have grown up without a father. A whole lot of people are trying to form relationships and enter into these partnerships without having that kind of model. And I think that that does intrinsically make them more likely to end up in bad marriages and relationships themselves, and perhaps to have bad taste in people or not recognize red flags because they haven't had a good model to look to. But even me, coming into the dating market with all this going for me, struggled. And the red pill community is full of it. I struggled in my teens with jerks. I struggled in, well, my college boyfriend was great, but I struggled in my 20s with a lot of jerks. Dating actually got far better once I hit my 30s. I have said for a long time, turning 30 is one of the best things that ever happened to me on multiple fronts. Like, you cannot believe these people that try to tell you otherwise. I have absolutely loved my 30s, and the dating definitely improved drastically. But all that to say, when I watch the stories of women talking about their experiences dating, talking about their experiences in bad relationships, I can very much relate to them. It resonates with me. I've lived it. My female relatives have lived it. My best female friends have lived it. I don't know a single woman, no matter how beautiful, no matter how wealthy, no matter how talented or intelligent, no matter how worldly, who has not been absolutely drugged through the mud by a man at least once in their lives. It is not merely a problem of women needing to choose better. The vast majority of people who end up in bad relationships or on bad dates did not get there because they misread the signs. They got there because they were duped. So we're going to talk about this today because while I think marriage is a wonderful outcome and something that people should strive for, I also stand firmly in solidarity with the women who are opting out of relationships, opting out of marriage, and opting out of kids. Unless your bar is up here and a man can reach it, and this goes for you guys too, guys, have your bars high, look for women that can reach it, but I'm speaking to women mostly here. Have your bar high and do not lower it. Look for a man that meets it or stay single. It will be better for you. Settling gets you absolutely nowhere. I've dated down. I know many women who have dated down. That doesn't equal good outcomes. Because if you date a man who is beneath you, he knows he's beneath you. He hates himself. He has a deep sense of shame, and he's actually going to look down on you even more for lowering your standards to be with him. I've tried dating uglies. Guess what? They're mean. They are absolutely mean. Hotter guys, way nicer. They don't have to be a GQ model. They don't even have to make six figures. These are not the values I am advocating that you set the bar high for. I think the bar needs to be, are they a hard worker? Do they have a provider mentality? Are they a protector? Are they honest? Are they kind? Do they have a sense of humility? Are they giving? You do not want to be with a person who is not giving. Do they have grit and resilience and mental fortitude? Do they have integrity? Are they intelligent? Do they make wise choices? Are they dedicated? Do they have some follow through in their lives? Do they take care of themselves? Do they take care of others around them? These are the traits of true masculinity. This is where the bar should be. And if a man doesn't have those things, he doesn't have anything to offer to you. Keep it moving.
Somebody got on my post and was basically like, I'm so glad we live in a generation of women who will get divorces and not stick with the kind of men that treat them bad. Whereas in the 50s and 60s, these women stayed with these men for a lifetime, knowing how unhappy and unfaithful the men were. But me personally, I pray for a generation of women that will walk away from a man at the first red flag, that will walk away when you know that it's not compatible, long before you get pregnant by him, long before you have to go to the altar or go through a divorce or have to go to a therapist because of all of the trauma that was caused to you in your life. I pray for a generation of women who are so comfortable with who they are, who know how valuable and powerful they are outside of marriage, so much so that they're actually okay with being alone. Even if it means that they never marry or they never bear children, because they understand that the value of a woman is not contingent on if she's been married or if she's bore children. I pray for a generation of women who will not stay with people just because your thought process is, oh, if I never marry, that means something was wrong with me. Because I feel like a lot of women, they do marry, even if they know it's not right, simply because all these men and podcasts and generations to come have taught us that if you are not a wife, then what good are you? So I pray that you love yourself so much that once you know that this is not going to honor you, you walk away before it brings trauma to you.
I firmly believe that most women are not looking for the moon. Most women have been well rid of their Disney prince fantasies by college. You have to be kind of delulu to not be. Instead, women are looking for somebody that they are attracted to. They want somebody who's on about the same attractiveness plane as they are. And seriously, guys, that bar is so much lower for men than it is for women. Women prioritize looks so much less than men do. And I would also say the beauty standards for men are far lower than they are for women. Women are doing so much work just to be what men go on the internet and call mid. They're getting hair extensions. They're getting their eyelashes done. They're getting like laser facials. They're doing diets. They're working out. Like the list goes on and on and on. And men cannot even be bothered to like get some hair plugs when their hair starts receding. Like the scales are not even close to the same.
When we groom, unlike some other disgusting creatures who never even bother putting a comb through their hair, Johnny Depp, would it kill you to take a shower?
So again, women are not looking for you to be a GQ model. They are just looking for you to take care of yourself and put in a little work and money to your appearance, just like they do. And then I think women are mostly looking for somebody who's just nice to them, who's just romantic, who just does sweet things for them. Like, I can't tell you how many women I know who've gone like on a first or second date and they are just giddy about it. And you'll be like, so what's so great? What's he done? And they're like, oh my God, he texts me every day. He puts his phone away when we're on a date. And you're just like, okay, isn't that like the standard for anybody? But it's not. The bar is literally down here. It is crazy. And I also have yet to see these Delulu women who are just obsessed with men who make at least 6 figures. I do think that women prioritize finances more than they prioritize some other things. Just like men probably overvalue a woman's appearance and perhaps her age, I do think women perhaps overvalue a person's financial status, especially when you're dating in your 20s. Because the reality is you have not arrived in your 20s, right? How much a guy makes when you're dating in your 20s, in your teens, even in your early 30s is not where he's going to ultimately end up for the most part. If he has some drive, if he's a hard worker, he's going to keep moving up, and building with somebody should be okay. I'm not saying date somebody who makes a lot less money than you. I think that's also a recipe for disaster. But somebody who's within like $10,000, $20,000 of your salary, I think that's normal. And I think most women are totally okay with that. If a woman is particularly materialistic, if a woman does drastically overvalue finances, that's a red flag for you guys. Keep it moving. There are plenty of women who do not feel that same way. But again, when we talk about what women are dealing with out here, I just think this conversation in the red pill community is so far removed from the reality of what's happening in the dating world for women. Like this idea that women are just like putting themselves on a pedestal and waiting for Prince Charming to come, and he has to be rich and he has to be super hot, and they won't like give men even the slightest bit of attention unless they meet the standard. It's not happening. It's like this weird red pill incel like porn fantasy. Like I truly, it's like what they would want if they were women. I don't even know where it comes from, but I'm going to show you the real things women are dealing with, the real men that they are choosing to go on dates with, and what's happening as a result. Let's watch.
Why do every woman think they're entitled to something? Cause in my eyes, you're really not. I don't have to text you back. I do not have to call you. Who are you supposed to be for me to even think about calling you? Did you eat? What type of question is that? I'm not your mama or your daddy. Why you not texting me? Maybe because I don't want to. You don't like me no more? It's not that. I just don't like a personality no more. Don't understand. Y'all females be running us away. All that worrying. All that bickering. Now you irritated, so now I'm irritated because you irritated and you finna irritate me and cause my irritation level to go up. Overly irritated now. I can Uber to the store, but I choose to walk so I can get a peace of mind and smoke. I do not drink liquor, but I'm so glad that they made weed, because if I didn't have weed, it wouldn't be no me and you, baby, because I can't tolerate you without this shit. Your mood swings on top of me being sober is not gonna work, boo.
Like, you would hope that every woman who came across that man would immediately run the other direction, but the fact that he's sitting here complaining about women online shows you they're not doing that. That he is finding plenty of women to entertain him, even though he seems very much on the edge of being violent. He very obviously hates women. He doesn't want to do the bare minimum of texting somebody back, or hey, just letting them know if you don't like them anymore and would like to keep it moving. That's your prerogative. But if that's the case, you have a duty to inform the other person so that they can also keep it moving. He's not doing that. I saw this TikTok the other week that was saying a lot of couples would not make it if they were sent to an island and they couldn't have their phones and they were just there with their partner, and it had to be the two of them for a week with no other technology. And I was baffled by that. I asked my husband about it because I was like, I can't think of anything better. That sounds lit. Like, we would have the best time. Why would you marry somebody that you don't love spending time with? Why would you date somebody that you don't like really enjoy being with and want to spend time with? That is actually the bare minimum. And it's so sad to me that we find ourselves in this circumstance where like people's partners are actively hostile towards them. But once again, guys, I'm going to have to continue warning you for each video you watch. It's about to get even worse. Let's go to the next one.
So I'm on my dating app and I'm swiping up, down, left, right, and I see this guy who, in my opinion, is pretty darn handsome. And all of his pictures are him outside lifting free weights, and he's wearing this wife beater, and he just has these really nice muscles. He's wearing like these orange pants. And I normally don't swipe on muscular guys because I just assume they're not going to be into me, right? Because I'm not muscular. But for some reason with him, I did anyway. And we actually matched the next day. And he sends me a message saying, nice to meet you. I'm so glad you swiped on me. A lot of people don't. I'm like, that's just because you are dreamy, my man. And then I told him how I almost didn't. And he's like, well, I'm glad you did. kid. And I'm like, and so we're talking back and forth through the app for a while. And then he ends up saying, so, you know, the earliest I'll be able to take you out is in May. Or I don't know if you'll wait that long. But if you will wait that long, I'd love to take you out. I'm thinking, May, it's March. That's in 2 months. And I'm thinking, oh, sure, of course. He's probably a workaholic because I tend to date every eligible American workaholic there is. So I say, why? Because of work? And he goes, no, do you not know where I am? I'm like, no. And he goes, I'm in jail. He's in jail. That's why he was wearing those orange pants in every picture, because that's all you can wear there. And so the reason why his gym didn't have any walls and why he was outside and it was only free weights is because he was in the yard. He was working out in the yard. So, and that wife beater, you know, maybe he was in the pokey serving time because he actually did beat his wife or something. So if you ever feel like you're dumb when it comes to dating, just know that I exist.
I love this poor sweet lady coming on TikTok and telling the story. It's hilarious. I like it for so many reasons, because I can very much understand why a Gen X or Boomer person would absolutely be taken aback to find out somebody on a dating app was in prison. But honestly, like at this point, I'm not even remotely surprised by that incident. Like the men on these dating apps are wild. I remember when Tinder first came out, it was like the first dating app of its kind, the first thing that wasn't like eHarmony or Match.com, which had always been seen as sort of for old people. And my sister called me and she was like, you have to try this new app. It's so fun. It's really cool. It's called Tinder. And I was like, I don't know, 25, 26. I was like, heck yeah, this is great. So I download it. I meet this guy named Tyler, not trying to cover up his identity. I actually would throw it out there. I don't remember his last name. Real loser. But I thought he was great. He was super attractive. We started talking. And I mean, like sun up to sundown, this man and I were talking for like an entire week. We went on 2 different dates. It was absolutely crazy good. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like definitely going to move forward. And then I went out to dinner with a big group of girls. And there were 2 new girls who had just moved to Nashville that another girl knew and brought to eat. And so I was talking about this new app because no one had heard of Tinder. And I'm talking about this guy. And one of the girls' faces just starts falling. And she's like, is he from Dallas? And I was like, yeah. He just like moved to Nashville from Dallas not long ago. And she was like, oh my God, I'm going to be sick. That's my best friend's boyfriend. And she just relocated for him. She quit her job and moved here to be with him because his job moved him. And she just moved in with him like 2 weeks ago. This man had a whole girlfriend living in his apartment. I was like, how did you even find the time to talk to me as much as you were? Total scumbag. Women, you're not dumb. These men are crafty. I know women who have gone out with men who have been hiding whole children, whole wives, whole families. They're lying about their jobs. They're lying about their housing situations. It is so bad out there that whole groups have arisen online for women to try to help and protect other women from these predators on these apps. And I do mean protect, because some of these men are legitimately a safety threat for women.
Here's why a guy from Chicago is suing an Are We Dating the Same Guy Facebook page. If you're unfamiliar with what I'm even talking about, this is a national group that has different pages for different cities throughout the country where women can warn each other of dangerous men if they do weird things on dates, or they can share stories to see if something has happened with them. Usually they'll post a picture, just a first name, and maybe the area they're in to warn other women. I'm a lawyer, and full disclosure, I read the St. Louis page like it's my morning paper. I love the tea on there, which is probably why this guy is so mad. Nico D'Ambrosio is the plaintiff in this lawsuit, and he's suing the page because he says it ruined his reputation after someone posted that he was clingy and he ghosted them after they had been on a few dates. The lawsuit that has been filed is quite long at 45 pages, and it names a ton of defendants, including a lot of different identities of Facebook, GoFundMe, and then moderators of the actual Facebook page have been named for allowing these bad posts to be made about him. As part of his relief, his attorneys are asking for Facebook to have strict moderation of this page. His lawsuit uses a lot of boilerplate claims we normally see, like intentional infliction of emotional distress and civil conspiracy, but the most important law I want to talk about is a law that's in Illinois only. It's gone into effect as of the beginning of this year. It's an anti-doxing law. This new Illinois law may not even be constitutional because it restricts your free right to speech, which is ironic because his attorneys say that he didn't even send these messages or do these harassing things, but even if he did, it's within his freedom of speech. The anti-doxing law says an individual engages in the act of doxing when an individual intentionally publishes another person's personally identifiable information without their consent. The subparts from the actual lawsuit include that there has to be intent to cause harm or embarrassment. It has been recently filed, and it's not showing that any of the defendants have been served yet, but I think if this lawsuit goes anywhere, we're going to see a lot of legal briefing to prove that this law is even constitutional to begin with. This is the case number, and I'm also tracking it on Pacer Online, so follow me for updates.
This is kind of a red flag behavior, Lucas. I want to say that if you start suing women for telling the truth about your bad behaviors, that does make me believe what they're saying about your bad behaviors. I think these women probably had a point, and so did the judge, who rapidly dismissed his case. And another judge dismissed another similar case in LA. Now, while I am married and actively not dating anymore, I admittedly joined the Atlanta Are We Dating the Same Guy group for pure entertainment. I wanted to actually show you guys some of the posts in there. Apparently, I don't really think I can. I think it's a privacy concern because those groups are set to private. But as a woman, you're free to join them. They usually have a questionnaire you have to answer to get in. And honestly, I'm a huge fan of these kinds of groups. Back in the day, before dating apps, if you were to go on a date with somebody, the likelihood was that somebody else you knew them, right? You were probably meeting them through family, through a community organization, through your school. You had other people who could vouch for them or who could warn you if there were problems with them. Increasingly, that is no longer true. When you meet somebody on an app, most likely they are a complete stranger to you and everybody you know. And because there are so many liars and frauds on these platforms, they can get away with all manner of things for God only knows how long. There was an entire series that blew up on TikTok a few months ago by a woman named Risa Tisa here in Atlanta. I can't even fully summarize everything she went through. It's like a 50-part series, but you can go listen to it. And it was another one of these scenarios where she met a guy on a dating app. He had her convinced he was somebody, that he had a certain job, that he had a certain income level. They were looking to buy a house together. This man was homeless. This man was absolutely homeless. He didn't have any money, right? He was totally grifting on her, living on her, and she almost got herself in a very bad financial situation because of that. These groups are useful and they are protected free speech. You have a right to tell other women about the experiences you've had with a person. It's only defamation if you're lying. And the fact that these men who are being reported in these groups as bad actors are then turning around and trying to use the legal system as an abusive method to shut up these women and shut down free speech tells you everything you need to know about them. And believe it or not, this is not the only time that women have found themselves sued as a result of a match on a dating app.
Now turning to a story that's gained a lot of national attention. We're talking about the man who sued his date for texting during a movie.
Brandon Jones first spoke with a man earlier this week, and tonight you got a chance to speak with a woman at the center of this lawsuit. See what she has to say.
Yeah, I did. You know, Mike and Quita, this woman, Crystal Cruz, says that this situation has been blown out of proportion. She also told us tonight that it's not uncommon for her to text her friend during a date just to let her know that she's safe. She is looking forward to the day that she can put all of this behind her. The past 24 hours has been life-changing for 35-year-old Crystal Cruz.
I've cried, I've laughed, I've been mad.
Cruz is being sued for $17.31. Why? Well, this man, 37-year-old Brandon Vesmar, says she ruined their date and his movie-going experience.
This is insane. I just couldn't even believe it.
Vesmar spoke to us Tuesday, and now Cruz wants to share her side of the story. She says he exaggerated about how much she was texting during the movie. Cruz says she only sent 3 text messages to her friend and tried to be discreet by holding her phone close to her. That's when she says things escalated and Vesmar asked her to stop.
I leaned back over to him and I said, well, I'm just going to go.
But things didn't stop there. Cruz says Vesmar went to great lengths to find her on social media.
He messaged everyone on my Facebook with the last name of Cruz. He messaged them to look for me.
Then a lawsuit was filed.
Let me move on with my life. I'll do whatever it takes.
And Cruz did just that.
I will love to give you your $17.31.
The two met for the first time since the date Thursday on national television. Vesmar has agreed to drop the lawsuit, and Cruz, well, she says she learned to be more careful dating. So again tonight, Vesmar has agreed to drop that lawsuit. He also told me that he wants the country to move on to more important things. He says his work here is done. Guys, back to you.
There are so many crazy stories from dating apps, and this is before people even actually start getting to know these people or get into relationships with them. The number of first date horror stories is actually a category in and of itself. We could spend a ton of time here. I'm just going to roll you one video.
One time on a first date, a guy told me that he was not attracted to me, but that he would be willing to have sex with me because he was really horny, as long as I came back to his place. Once on a first date, a guy told me that I was uneducated because I said that Christopher Nolan movie Tenet was difficult to watch. Once I was like 10 minutes late to a first date and I was really apologetic, but he forgave me really quickly because he said it was probably due to the fact that I'm a female driver. One time I was on a walk with a man and he pointed out some mulberries to me and started explaining to me how mulberries look like blackberries and that's how you know that they're not poisonous. And then I asked him how to distinguish poisonous berries that might look like blackberries, and he got mad at me. This one time a guy asked me if I ever painted my nails, and I said sometimes but not often, why? And he said, haven't you ever heard the expression, men love their dick wrapped in purple? No dude, I haven't heard that because I'm fairly on an expression. Once for a first date, I went for a walk with this guy in a nature reserve and it was a lot emptier than I expected. And at some point he said, wow, it's crazy, I could just kill you right here and no one would even know. On this one first date, a guy told me that he stopped drinking alcohol because there are too many fat people in the world. Once I was on a first date with a guy who told me that he was pretentious, and when I asked him what he meant by that to try to understand better, he said that he only liked high quality art and wasn't gonna waste any of his time on things like trashy television and that kind of stuff. And, you know, to try to give him the benefit of the doubt, I said, oh, it sounds like you just have very particular taste. And he got really mad at me and said, no, I'm pretentious. Once on a first date, we went for a walk in the city after dinner and we conveniently ended up at his apartment, at which time I decided I'm gonna call an Uber, but he insisted that I call it from his apartment since it was winter. And while we were in there, he gestured to the air mattress on the floor, which was the only thing in his entire apartment, and said, I wouldn't mind having first date sex. Once I was dating this guy, and the first time I went over to his place, he asked me if I wanted to see his gun. It was a handgun. I had said no, but he showed it to me anyways.
And all of these stories that I've told you thus far are actually, surprisingly, happy endings because none of these women died as a result of their first dates that they went on. Like, this isn't even a full summary of the amount of women who have met this fate. This is just a few of the headlines in recent years. So to the absolute bottom dweller men who immediately complain and say, where's the criticism of women when we talk about the issues women are dealing with from men? Shut the F up. The scales are nowhere close to the same. You maybe deal with not enough women wanting to date you if you don't make enough money. Maybe you don't find enough women who want to date you at your height, but you never are at risk of being murdered by your dates.
I stopped dating around the time when I found out that there are women out here who are giving their boyfriends their work. She ain't lying. I had a coworker who worked 3 jobs. 3 jobs. We worked at a nursing home together from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. And on some nights, I knew she was tired, so I would tell her, go get you a nap in. I got the residence. Just go rest. And one night we was just talking, and she was just opening up to me and telling me, stuff about her life, whatever. And I had asked her, why does she work so hard? Like, I was like, whatever it is you're working hard for, I hope you get it, girl. And I hope you get it soon, so you won't have to work so hard. That lady looked me dead in my damn eyes and told me she worked 3 jobs to pay for her boyfriend child support because she didn't want him to go to jail. That was the last night I covered for her to take a nap.
All right, let's welcome Madison to Left on Red. Madison has been seeing Jake for 7 months. 7 months. And is getting ready to move in with him, which begs the question, Madison, why are you here?
Well, I mean, first off, you guys are awesome, and I can't thank you enough for helping me because I'm really lost about what to do. To get right to it, I haven't heard from Jake in 4 days.
4 days.
And they're moving in together.
Yeah, that's kind of strange.
Like, if you're packing boxes, you kind of want to go back and forth on that. That is really...
Okay.
I'm
sorry.
Can you do us a favor and tell us about your relationship so far? What's the skinny?
I mean, basically, to be honest, it's been amazing. I mean, which is hilarious because, like I said, we haven't talked in 4 days. But
Yeah.
I mean, it really has been amazing. Like all exclamation points across the board.
Well, you would want it to be that way since you're moving in together, right? Like you
Yeah,
want it to be
right.
amazing. That's great.
Yeah, that's like that should be the bar. And
Yeah.
you know, we were set up by a mutual friend. There's a little background, and you know, it was a date that I honestly considered canceling like 10 times before it happened, but you know, I didn't, and we hit it off, and basically we've been inseparable. And because we've been inseparable, we've been looking at apartments, and it's so exciting. And then right before the weekend, he stopped texting me, and I'm like, WTF? Can I say that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, you can say more than that, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not. It's not a good sign. I'm trying to like think of something positive, but yeah, and no fight, no disagreement.
No, I mean, not really. I mean, we didn't really fight it. We don't really fight. So yeah, no, there was never any fight.
You know, whenever we ask this question, and it's funny, we get this in the comment section sometimes. Sometimes people are like, I just can't believe that people aren't self-aware enough to just know. And it's like, well, they wouldn't have come to us if they knew, if they had some inkling, right? It's okay. So now you know the rules here. We call, you stay silent, you listen in, we ask, and we see what we can dig up.
Lips are sealed, I promise.
Okay.
Promise.
Yeah.
She just promised. We don't need her to re-promise. Can promise once. You
I've
can't
been
double
hurt
promise.
before.
A few times. Okay, let's make the call.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, this is the Adam Wild and Jack show.
Hi. What can I do for you?
I was wondering if we could talk to the owner of this phone.
About what?
We can't really chat about that with anybody else. Are we able to speak to Jake?
Okay, well, he's in the shower right now. Should I have him call you back? Like, what's your number?
I'm sorry, who is this?
I'm his girlfriend.
The you are. Put Jake on the phone right now. Like right now. Right now.
I'm sorry. Who is this?
Put Jake on the phone now.
Yeah. Bye.
Okay.
I
Okay, hold
gotta
on.
deal with
So
this. Like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out right now. I'm having a heart attack. I don't even know who that.
Okay.
Like.
Yeah.
he
No.
is.
No.
I can't.
Yeah.
Oh my
Go.
god.
Yeah.
I gotta
No
go.
problem.
I gotta go. I'm gonna
Okay.
get thrown
All right.
up.
Okay.
Okay.
I cannot make this up. I cannot make this up. Imagine first date with a man. You hit it off. Great energy. Date runs long. And you have a graduation party to get to. So I'm like, you know what? Okay, you want to come with me to my homegirl's graduation party? He's like, okay, yeah, sure. But I don't want to show up empty-handed, so we stop at the Target. Another green flag, because we've been hitting it off. Okay, great. We stop at Target. He gets her a card. We go to the graduation party. I introduce him to my friend. Cool. We go to my car. We're getting into my car. He's saying like, oh yeah, can you drop me off at the mall? Da-da-da-da, like whatever. Fine, because he allegedly Ubered an hour to get to me. Because he lives far out, not in the city. This man gets in my car. All of a sudden, a woman comes up out of the blue. I don't know where this woman was. She comes up and she yanks open my passenger side door. She's like, what the F are you doing? Get up. Come with me right now. Come with me right now. Get up. Get up. You're coming with me. At first, I thought she was joking. And at first, I thought it was like she saw him from afar, thought he was fine. Came into the car, was like, you're coming with me. You're coming with me. Because he was just like, chill, chill, chill. So I was like, oh, okay, that's cute. Like, he's fine. Okay, period, sis. But, like, not too much. But then she gets rowdy. She's like, get out the car. Get out the car. And yanks this full-grown size man and yanks him out the car. So I'm like, oh, y'all know each other. Takes him out the car. Bella, my car, is here. Her car is here. I'm T-boned in. I cannot move. There's a car in front of me. So all I can do is sit and look in my rear view at her beating. Just beating his ass. Just beating his ass. And I'm like, I turn my music down so I can hear what's being said. I can't hear nothing, but just going. And I'm like, what the heck? I didn't have the word. Like, I know the words that happen so fast, and I cannot move. So I'm sitting here, waiting for her to finish his beating. Finally, they start to back up. They pull up beside me. I'm looking like this. And he goes, and they drive off. And I just didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Because clearly that's your girl. We talked about cheating. We talked about red flags. We talked about green flags. He had passed a lot of, like, he had a good head on his shoulders, I thought. We talked about cheating in 30 minutes. We talked about emotional versus physical cheating. And she picked him up and yanked him out of the passenger side. And they drove off, and then he texted me, "What are you doing?" What am I doing? I'm coping. I'm done with men. Especially light skins. I can't.
And these are just the initial minefields women are having to deal with when they're starting to date before they get into relationships. Surprisingly enough, it doesn't get better once you make it official.
So I saw this post that says what it feels like to have your boyfriend of 8 years buy a house and then charge you rent to live in it while making you both design director and general contractor of the renovation. My only question for you is, what's in it for you? I see where he benefits. He gets somebody to split the mortgage with him without having to be on that mortgage, but he also gets free help. He gets free labor. In addition to the cooking and cleaning that you're probably already doing for him, you're also scrubbing the baseboards and the floors, you're painting, you're organizing, you're designing, you're building, all of that. All of that for what? In exchange for what? Now, she goes on to say in a follow-up video, they've been together for 8 years, but they got together really young. She was only 20. Okay, well, that makes you 28 now. Okay, 20 might have been too young to get married. Okay, what's wrong with 28? This is literally what it looks like to be a Barbara the Builder, where you are in here helping a man get himself established, get himself on his feet, but there's no guarantee that you'll be reaping any of those benefits. Your boyfriend has literally become your landlord. Like, what happens when you're late with the rent? I feel like all too often we do these things to prove to a man what kind of wife we'll be, but that doesn't mean that man will necessarily see a wife in you.
You know the biggest red flag they make? Men who want to move into your home, ladies. Okay, save this video because I'm going to walk you through some legal steps that I didn't take that I wish I would have and I will in the future. For context, I'm 57 years old and I've been a homeowner since my mid-20s. I've also been a landlord, so I'm very familiar with lease agreements. When a man I was dating asked to move into my home, I was blinded by love. I did ask him to sign a lease agreement. He wasn't interested in that. I let it go. Big mistake on my part. What I discovered is what every landlord knows who doesn't get a lease agreement signed. And that is, you may not get any payment at all. It's as though they have a free roof over their head at your expense. A couple of months after he moved in, this guy told me, he's like, I came up with a plan, a payment plan. Well, guess what? It didn't vibe with the $600 or $700 a month that I wanted to collect from him. Even if I had charged him $1,000 a month, that would have still been a bargain. And when the relationship started to fade, because I didn't have a written agreement in place, getting him out of my home became complicated. Now, I'm not suggesting that a signed agreement solves all of the issues, but it would have given me some sort of legal ground to stand on. Oh, I got him out of my house by financially helping him get an apartment and signing over a used car I had bought to him.
Would I be the asshole if I visited my parents after my wife gives birth? My wife, Sarah, and I, both early mid-30s, are expecting twins in early March. First and only kids for both of us. We had to go through IVF due to fertility struggles. Sarah is scheduled for a C-section due to this being a difficult pregnancy and other complications that make her high risk. Luckily, her parents are only a few hours drive away and willing to come whenever needed. My parents live in another country, and I see them usually once a year to every year and a half. They are aware of when Sarah is scheduled to have her C-section. Things have been going on they don't know how to handle, and they want me there to help out. My parents don't have a lot of money, but they went ahead and booked me a non-refundable plane ticket to come help them and visit for 6 weeks. The flight date is 5 days after Sarah's scheduled C-section. I've asked Sarah to look into rescheduling her surgery a few weeks earlier if possible, but she's refused, saying she's gotten herself mentally prepared for that particular date. And unless there's some sort of emergency with the twins, her OB is not going to approve pushing it up a few weeks. I told her that it would give me more time to help her directly after birth, before I leave for my parents. Sarah thinks I'm crazy for even considering going for that long, or at all, while we have 2 newborns at home and she's recovering from surgery and we're getting adjusted to being new parents.
Oh, I'd be so furious.
If I had the money to spare, I'd hire someone to stay with Sarah while I'm gone. I gently reminded Sarah that I rarely see my family, and if they're asking and paying for me to fly there, it must be something serious that requires my presence.
So he doesn't even know what it is?
At parents' request, I did not tell her the nature of the issues they need help with.
Oh my God.
Plus, Sarah's own parents are only 2.5 hours drive away.
Oh, I'd be so pissed. Oh my, wow. Okay.
And I'm confident they'll drop whatever they're doing to come help should she need it. Her mom works remotely and could even stay over some nights to help out with the twins. Sarah again called me crazy and ended up telling her parents what I suggested. They both called me lecturing and fussing about abandoning Sarah when she needs me the most. I ended up venting to my younger brother, who is also going to be flying out to our parents, but for a shorter time. He is not married and child-free. And he says Sarah is way out of line.
What?
And she'll be fine if I go.
Oh, you guys.
She's simply reacting in this way due to hormones.
Oh, wow.
To be honest, I really want to go, and my parents would lose several $1,000s if I refused. And I'd have to buy a ticket for myself later if I didn't go then.
I've always said that I personally don't really believe in divorce unless there is cheating or abuse. But if I was pregnant with twins and my husband tried to leave the country, that's a new category where I'm like, that you can divorce him for sure. Divorce immediately.
Did I ever consider walking away before my ex-husband had a chance to murder our daughter? When I met my ex-husband, he was the nicest guy you ever did meet. Actually, all my friends said so. They said, Desiree, he's such a nice guy and he's so interested in you. Give him a chance because he is such a nice guy. And I wasn't attracted to him. I didn't want to date him. And so I was like, no, I'm okay. And they're like, look at him. He's doing all this stuff for you. He's helping you out. He's giving you rides. He's buying you things. And you won't give the guy, the time of day. And I said, you know what? You're right. I've been burned by the not so nice guy so many times. I'm going to give this guy a chance. I've actually had people who knew me at that time in my life come back to me and say, I am really sorry because I definitely encouraged you to date him. It's not their fault. I start dating this really nice guy when I am 17. And at that age, I'm already a mother, right? I have a child who is under 2 years old. And we get pregnant when I am almost 18 years old. At that time, we were living with my best friend to this day, who was our roommate. And there were some signs. Some of the signs were really weird. Like he would lie about turning up the thermostat. Like my roommate would be like, oh, did you turn up the thermostat? And he'd be like, no. And she'd be like, he's literally the only person who could do it. Or he would eat her food and we would know he ate her food and he would lie about it. Weird things like that. Those were some of the early signs. But again, he was like a super nice guy. So it was really easy to overlook those things. And I also was 17. I was a 17-year-old girl. My daughter is currently 17 years old. After I got pregnant, my ex-husband said, you know what? Quit your job. I can support us, take care of the kids. He left his current job and he went and got a job at a coal mine where he was making better money. He was still a green hat, so he wasn't making great money, but he was making better money. And I quit my job and we moved out of our roommate's house into a little house of our own. That's when I started to see like very early signs. And it was usually in the middle of a really big fight where I was also angry myself and also yelling. I say signs. He got mad and punched a windshield one time. That's it. That's the most aggressive thing he ever did before we got married. Most of the other signs were related to lying. So then we get married, and that's when things really change. At that point, he has already strapped me. He has asked me to quit my job, and I had agreed. I am pregnant with his child. I am married to him, and I am dependent on him. I have integrated into his family and his church, and now they are my family and my church. And it was when things first got bad that I tried to walk away. Again, we had just gotten married. I was pregnant. I didn't have a job. He was providing for me, but I kicked him out of the house because his anger got out of control and I didn't want him anywhere near me or my oldest child. And so I kicked him out and he went to go live with his parents. But that didn't last long because I really loved his family and I had a lot of respect for his family and I wanted us to be like his family was. And so when one of them came into my home and talked about what God wanted of me, which was for me to be a good and submissive wife, I believed that they knew what was best for me. But let's say I did walk away and I stayed away and I wasn't so easily manipulated by his family member. The fact is that he would have received partial custody of my daughter. He would have been alone with her more had I left him than if I stayed with him. I also think it's important to recognize that we got married in May of 2008. He did not become abusive until after that, and my daughter was dead by December 2008. That is not a lot of time, and these things happen quickly. But making a plan like walking away and walking away for good and making sure that you and your children are safe takes a lot of time.
Guys, my camera's shaking and I'm having to stop filming so much right now because my dogs are absolutely freaking out on the thunderstorm outside, so we're almost done. Hopefully we can get through this episode. I am absolutely gassed by some of these stories. I have a lot of smoke for some of my ex-boyfriends. Some of them are lovely, but I have some smoke for some of them. I gotta say, when I see videos like this, I look back and I'm like, I guess I never did have it all that bad in the dating world. The amount of disrespect, the amount of paying men's bills, the amount of cheating and lying and ghosting, I might be in jail. I might be in jail had I lived through some of this. I don't know. My bar is high. So anytime I've ever been dating somebody and they even remotely step out of line, I'm like, I'm done. Goodbye. And I think that has served me well. Women need to learn to leave men sooner. Dump them sooner. Don't sit around and wait for it to get worse. Because if you let it keep going and you ultimately do end up in permanent situations with these people, whether it be living together, whether it be having kids together, whether it be getting married, it is not going to improve and the stakes are going to be so much higher for you to get out. I also just think it's so interesting in many of these conversations. I see this a lot when we talk about women who are either paying men's bills, literally paying their bills, or who have men trying to move in with them and live off them. I actually did have this happen. Back in the day, I had a really nice apartment in Nashville due to a very generous roommate and his family that gave me a subsidized cost. And I was dating this guy. And after a month or so, I was like, does he have a house? Because he kept telling me he lived with his family out in Smyrna, which is, I don't even know where it is, 30, 40 minutes south of Nashville. And I was like, but where is the house? And I never saw it. And he just was at my house all the time. And I had a key code entry. I never gave him a key. And after a month or two, I was like, yeah, he's living here. He's living here for sure. And I confronted him about it. And he was like, well, you have such a great apartment at such a low cost. I don't understand how you're going to come at me. Nobody's helping me out like this. Yeah. Needless to say, that relationship didn't go much further than that. But seriously, you've got women on here who literally have men living in their homes taking advantage of them. And all of this is bad enough, but sadly, as is pointed out with the last video, it ultimately can lead to tragedy. I'm not saying that every man who takes advantage of a woman or who mistreats them is going to become an abuser or ultimately harm them. What I am saying is that they are red flags and it is always a real possibility and potential for women in their lives. I can't even fully scratch the surface here, guys. I told you I wouldn't be able to. This video is already getting too long. But it really is as bad as I'm showing you and actually so much worse because when you watch TikTok, when you watch YouTube, when you really start looking to gather the information of these anecdotal stories, the body of evidence is overwhelming. Women are out here working multiple jobs. They're paying the bills. They're doing the bulk of the childcare. They're doing the bulk of the housework. They're doing the bulk of the work to make their relationships keep going. They're being lied to, manipulated, cheated on, left, absolutely ghosted, emotionally abused, sometimes physically abused.
I want a divorce.
They're helping men build up their careers, dedicating their lives to their families, and then waking up one day to find that their husband has bounced and moved on to another woman. There is a shortage of quality men out there in the dating pool, and you cannot tell me otherwise. There are absolutely still great guys out there, and perhaps there is a problem that women are too often overlooking those good guys. I'm very open to talking about that. But what I know beyond the shadow of a doubt is that men are not dealing with this level of crazy or danger from women in the dating pool. And ultimately, all of this is why a growing number of women are choosing not to get married and to be childless. Because all of this is a woman's worst nightmare. And like, I include myself in that camp. I really thought for a while I would just not get married because I was not finding men that were meeting the bar. I still say to this day, if my husband died, like, I probably would not remarry. Because dealing with this kind of treatment, this kind of behavior over and over and over is demoralizing. It takes a mental toll on you. Every time you get involved with somebody who mistreats you, it damages you emotionally. It makes you less capable of actually bonding with people and moving forward and being able to trust them. Women's fears around dating and relationships are well-founded, and they really aren't hyperbolic.
It genuinely pains me so much to say this, but I would like to thank the men, okay? I want to thank the men for the 4B movement coming to America. Because seriously, if a few years ago y'all didn't start nagging women by threatening to outsource women's services, when women first realized that they now both work and carry the domestic load and do all the emotional labor and all the mental labor, and basically started asking men, like, what do you bring to the table? The men were like, what do you bring to the table? You know, I could just pay someone to clean. I could just pay someone to ask my ID. I could just pay someone to do this, that, and the other. And if y'all didn't start doing that, we just simply wouldn't be here today, because you showed your whole ass with that move. It made women realize that romantic love was indeed made up to extract free services out of them. And women felt like real ass, you know, when men started saying this stuff, because this whole time women thought we were supposed to do that stuff for love. Like, we were supposed to do that stuff out of love and for someone who is willing to meet us halfway. And, you know, for the longest time, it was really easy to justify that halfway point by saying, okay, well, you cook, clean, and have kids and do all this stuff, and I'll go to work. And so women thought that that was kind of the deal, but y'all were both doing those things because you both love each other. So then when women in good faith, you know, went to work, brought money into the house, and all they said was, hey, you know, can you help me out with some of the stuff? And men were like, why should I do that? I go to work. And the women were like, well, I go to work too, but I also, you know, do this, this, and this. And men were like, well, I could just pay someone to do that. And women were like, oh, so this whole time I've just been an idiot thinking that you would, you know, meet me where I want to be met. This whole time you have operated on me making the kind of sacrifices that you yourself wouldn't be willing to make. You know, because women were doing all that stuff out of love and you cheapened it to a service, which got the women thinking. It got them to realize that they actually provide a lot of these services. Even if most men would rather outsource that stuff than have a girlfriend, most men wouldn't be able to afford that. Neither the stuff, nor, it turns out, the girlfriend. Like, and women just sort of overnight became faced with the fact that it would take a lot of money to replace a woman's presence. Most men don't even have the kind of love that women are really looking for in order to be rewarded with all of the benefits that women bring to a relationship. Because when you think about it, it's like, what do men do in a relationship? Seriously, like, in the modern day, women also go to work and can theoretically provide for themselves. What do men do in relationships for women? They just say, like, I love you and all that stuff. They barely even say thank you to, like, their wives and girlfriends for cooking dinner, for cleaning the house, for minding the kids, for minding the pets, for minding all the appointments, doing all this and the other. Men don't do this stuff. Like, in our society, it's not expected that men are going to do any of that stuff, and it's not even expected that men are going to thank you for it. And in fact, when women brought this discrepancy to the table, men said, fine, well, I'll outsource it. And women were like, that's interesting. Like, how much would that cost you? Can most men, like, is this really a danger to me? Can most men really afford this? And it turns out absolutely I can't. But now women know their value, because y'all wanted to run your mouth about how replaceable women were and about how you could just replace them with literal services. Women this whole time have been over here doing this for love, out of the goodness of their heart, out of their, you know, duty to society, their duty to their marriage. And frankly, a lot of women were also doing it because they were forced, because they simply didn't have their own resources. And realizing that the stuff that we bring to the table that's expected, that's not expected of men the same way, the monetary discrepancy of those things is too big for us to continue like this. And so women have taken a step back from dating, and now we have this 4B movement, and now men are trying to respond with their own movement. But it's like, you bring nothing to the table. You come into a relationship and you take, and now women know that. And not only that, they also know that most of y'all can't afford all the services and all of the things that you rely on women for. A surrogate alone, to have just one child, would cost you upwards of $200,000. Most of y'all won't make that in 5 years. And women have been out here doing this for free for y'all. Because it's actually a whole lot of services that you would need to outsource in order to replace just one woman. Meanwhile, y'all's services can and literally probably should be outsourced anyway. When it comes to men's services, they can easily be outsourced and should be outsourced for a one-time fee. And when women thought about that, and when they thought, wow, like, you know, so this is how much money it would take for a man to replace me, a wife or a girlfriend or a woman in his life. And this is how much it would cost for me to replace a man in my life. So, and in fact, like improve my life by removing a lot of the danger and also unnecessary labor that men bring to the table. Like you have to pick up after them, you have to like be their mommy and their bang maid and whatever, listen to all their problems, but then also not depend on emotional support from them because they think that stuff is, you know, boring and they will just tell you to stop crying and like, they don't know what to do. So like you can't even depend on them for the same things. So to really replace a man, it's a very low cost. Like what does a man do around your house or in your life that is really not replaceable for free or for very cheap? Like carry heavy things, you can just call a friend, that's free. Like what else? He's like specialized in some kind of service, like he's a plumber, so he can fix a leak. Okay, so once a year you call a plumber and you spend $500. So men's worth and value probably comes out to about $1,000 out of pocket. All the things that men say they bring to the table, like, you know, all these trade skills, they often don't have them. Like you still have to call a plumber, you still have to, these are specialized skills that you'd be calling someone for anyway. Mowing your lawn, you could outsource that for like $200 a month. But most of the stuff that women do, cooking, cleaning, raising children, having children, all that would cost thousands and thousands of dollars every month. And women are like, why would I be giving that away for free when you think you can outsource it and you can't? You can't afford me. You are not. You can't afford me. You can't replace all of my services with money, which means you can't afford a woman. Your services can easily be outsourced for like a couple $100 a month, if that. Meanwhile, to replace a woman's services, you would be looking at a lot more of a daily rate, and that daily rate would be very high because to pay somebody to come into your house and cook you a meal, that would cost you a lot of money. To pay somebody to provide emotional support for you, because you can't get that outside of a relationship with a woman, that's a therapist. But paying somebody to have a child for you outside of marriage, women don't have to pay for that. They can go out there and get knocked up by anyone they want, or they can go to a sperm bank. But for y'all to have a child with an unwilling woman, you'd have to pay her. It turns out the market rate for that is about $200,000 for a surrogate. Honestly, thanks for pointing all that out. Good luck out there.
One of the things that's entertaining on TikTok right now is watching women come up with increasingly succinct articulations of why they don't want to be in relationships with men. And on the other hand, a large contingent of men doubling down on exactly the same attitudes that have caused them to feel that way in the first place. And I sort of get it. On the one hand, if somebody came up to you in work and said, look, I need to give you some feedback, you would immediately be on the defensive. But on the other hand, it's like watching a company's entire customer base go online to complain about their product. Like, this product is literally making us sick. And the company is just kind of like saying, well, there's nothing wrong with the product. It must be you. So I love the challenge. I would like to have a go at a succinct articulation. And for me, it's this: being in a relationship with a man damages you. If you're a woman, being in a relationship with a man, on average, will damage you financially, physically, and psychologically. For as far as we've known. So those effects will range from things like increased risk of depression, anxiety, poorer sleep, all the way through to reduced life expectancy and increased risk of being unalived. And so you might ask as a man, you'd be like, oh, in that case, you know, why are women choosing to have relationships with men at all? Why did they ever do that? And the answer is because we forced them to. We forced them to financially, we forced them to physically, we forced them to psychologically. And so what's happening now is not mind-bogglingly complex. For the first time in recorded history, women actually have a choice. You know, they're free of these constraints and they're saying, oh, thank God for that. You know, we don't want to do that anymore. And men are kind of horrified at this because they sort of assumed that when we were going into these relationships because of all the benefits, because they just love, you know, spending time with men. So I think that if you take the kind of the business analogy, a rebrand is not going to be enough. I can see that there's people kind of rebranding masculinity. I think it's probably a back to basics product redesign that is required. And there's lots of people kind of throwing their hands up and saying, well, you know, with the birth rate dropping, it's going to be a huge problem. I'm not too worried about that. I think that's what AI and robotics are for. The thing that actually worries me more is hybrid working environments. And by that, I mean working environments where you've got men and women working together. Because if some of the recent research around divergence in attitudes is to be believed, they're just going to be in completely different places in terms of values and beliefs and psychologically. And it's very hard to see how men and women will be able to actually work alongside each other in the future.
As I said at the beginning of this video, I think relationships and marriages are great if you can find a person of quality to form them with. But until we start addressing the problems that women are facing in the dating pool, you are going to see more and more of them opt out. And really, my theory is that at the end of the day, that's going to hurt men a lot more than it hurts women, because women have other means of forming community. They have other close relationships. They seem to do better single than men do. And so men are going to have to be the ones to address these issues within themselves and also holding other men around them accountable. All right, guys, that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Don't forget to leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you next week. If you like this video, don't forget to check out others in my series Histrionics here, and you can watch my weekly show, the BASEDPolitics podcast, that is moving to my channel from this week on here.